Paula is a strategic and enthusiastic trailblazer with decades of marketing and sales experience in sponsorship, as well as advertising, branding, and marketing. Her company, Caravelle Marketing, is a consulting firm that specializes in partnership marketing, revenue development, and strategic planning. I had the very great pleasure of working with Paula to raise over $16 million for the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games, and I truly admire her instinct and wisdom in working with sponsors. Paula has also developed sponsorship programs for Seattle Center, Washington State Fair, Washington Department of Transportation, Fred Hutch Obliterite, and the University of Washington. She is known for developing smart strategies and successfully coaching sales teams, executives, and boards to achieve their goals. I am so pleased to have her join us today. Paula, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share your presentation with the group. They're excited to hear from you.
We represent multiple properties. So what I'm going to share with you today is not theoretical. It's what we are actually putting into practice right now for our clients and the work that we're doing. I'm going to share some advice and some guidance during to navigate these uncharted waters. And also I want to give you some really specific action items to put into place. Now, I will say that we are shifting our strategy and our actions as it relates to sponsorship daily. So I think it's important that you take some of the information and the advice that I'm going to share with you today and apply it to what is happening as the days ahead unfold. So we've been having conversations with sponsors, current sponsors, prospective sponsors, events, people around the nation. So we're gathering a lot of information on what other people are doing. And then some of the things that we're doing are instinctual based on some of our past experience. And we are doing our best to take a leadership role during these times and provide information to people. And so please feel free to visit our website and follow us, and hopefully you'll find the information that we're sharing helpful to your efforts. So with that, let's jump in, because I really want to give ourselves enough time to ask some questions and have a conversation. This really is the time to build relationships. This is the time to reach out to your sponsors, connect early, connect often, talk with them about what their experience is, ask how you can be helpful to them, and provide whatever resources or advice that you have available to help them in their business. But this is an important time to be building relationships with your current partners and also with existing partners as well. It's really important that you know your contracts. So make sure that you go through each one of your contracts. We created a large spreadsheet. We put all of our contracts in there. We included important language around cancellations and force majeure. Make sure during these really challenging times when people are talking about the event and the operations and the marketing and the communications and all of those things which are critical to your business, but it's important that someone be at the table as a voice for sponsors as well. So make sure for those of you who sell sponsorships or lead the sponsorship effort that you are bringing the sponsors to the table and being a voice for them. And I think it's just important to continually ask for sponsors to be patient as you navigate this time together. Offer solutions. I know many of you are having some conversations about some of the assets that you have, especially your digital social platforms, and how you can use them to talk about your sponsors. And so at the Washington State Fair, we're having some conversations around when is it appropriate to include sponsors in outgoing communications? Is it appropriate to recognize some of the work that they're doing right now to help our communities. We have powerful voices in the event business. We have access to a large audience through our digital and social assets. And this is a time to use that to talk about your partners, how grateful you are for them, and also highlight the good work that they're doing in the community. Now, this is something that's up to each and every one of you, but it's a good conversation to be having. All right. All right, so here are a couple of action items, and these are action items that we have been putting into place over the last few weeks. Contact all your current partners if you haven't already. Ask them some thoughtful questions to understand how they personally, professionally are being impacted. And be sure that you also have collected all of the pertinent information related to that partnership. You understand contracts, payments that have been made, and that you've had some preliminary conversations with leadership to understand the impact of refunding sponsorships to the organization if indeed, and hopefully not, you do need to cancel your event. Ask partners to be patient. I am just pleasantly surprised at how patient sponsors have been with us and how supportive that they are. So I think if we ask them to be patient, if we ask them to be a partner, they're rising to that occasion. And I am hearing that from people all around the country. So engage them in those conversations, and then make a list with your colleagues. This is a time to get people together virtually, have a conversation about what are the resources in the organization that we can use right now to support partners, and how can we weave them into the messaging in an authentic and meaningful way. So those are some specific action items that you can take, and we are taking those with each of our clients. All right. So during selling during a crisis, it's challenging, and I really can appreciate the tendency to retreat and not to be selling. I understand that it may feel, bad timing, insensitive, and I do think that it's important that you're changing your message and that you are being very mindful of the challenges that people are facing. But it is also important that you're using this time to engage people in conversations, and also to prepare for the certain recovery that we will face. 74% of consumers say that they are more likely to spend money with corporate business partners who sponsor events. So that is never been more true than it is now. People, audiences are going to appreciate those events that happen and the sponsors who support them, and it will be very important for you to talk about that in the future. How are you going to recognize the role that your corporate sponsors are playing in your event? So create a prospect list, set a daily outreach goal to current and prospective sponsors. It doesn't matter what that number is. It needs to be right for you, but it's important that you do it because it helps you to continue to move forward during a time when you are likely feeling deflated. This is a great time to take a look at your assets. What do you have available to support sponsors and businesses right now and into the future? Putting together an asset inventory is never an easy job. This is a good time to do it because you may have some extra time on your hands. And if you do, take a look at those assets and also be thinking about what is it that people are going to need in the future, and how can you create assets and benefits to provide those. Go back and take a look at your proposal templates right now and your sales materials. How are you telling your story? How will you want to tell your story differently in the future? So we are starting to weave in pages into our storytelling presentation that talk about the power of sponsorship marketing. We're going back to the basics and telling people how to sell sponsorships and, how to buy sponsorships, why to buy sponsorships, why it's an important part of the marketing plan. Companies will need to get close to consumers again, and in a meaningful way, and event sponsorship provides that. So we need to kind of take that step back and sell sponsorship and sell events in general as an industry, and then also our specific events. Research. This is a great time to do research on prospects. Many of you have heard me say this before. It's an important part of our sales process. We don't pick up the phone. We don't send an email until we know at least 5 key I know statements for each one of our prospects. This is a good time to be doing that research. So again, you are ready to go when the time is right. So there's a few action items for you. So leading sales during an uncertain time. So whether you're the person who's responsible for selling sponsorships or someone on your team or a colleague, you can most certainly take a leadership role. And so it's important to conduct scenario planning and play all scenarios out. Now, we started doing this a couple of weeks ago, and I'll share with you in large part because we were going to the dark side. At the center of the financial meltdown crisis, we learned a great deal about leadership and helping people through these difficult times. And I'm sure all of you are mindful of that as well, and thinking about how you can be helpful to the people around you. So I have found it's really helpful to give people meaningful assignments and meaningful work to do during this time to keep occupied. And so I think it's a beneficial thing for your team. Really important to be planning for the future. Getting back to basics, right? Shoring up your sales materials, your prospect lists, your research. We can get on the phone and talk just about sponsorship and have some conversations around pricing and negotiating and some of the challenges that we all face on a daily basis when selling sponsorships. We think that the impact of events from a sponsor perspective will be greater in the future. And although we are on hold at the moment, we are certainly not done. And partners and audiences will remember how brands have responded in this crisis. So I hope that's helpful to you, and know that I'm going to continue to be an advocate and have these conversations with brands and agencies as well. So with that, let's jump over to some questions. I would be happy to answer. And thank you for your patience. That was a lot of information in 30 minutes.
No, it was fantastic, Paula. Thank you for being so specific in the action items. I think that's something we're all looking for right now. Maybe you can share a little bit more about I guess the specifics of what your sponsors are reporting back to you when you have those conversations. I'm thrilled to hear that they are being patient, but maybe you can share some of the specifics that they're sharing with you. Do they have ideas? Are they saying we'll wait for a period of time or indefinitely? Maybe share some specifics.
Yeah, so thanks, Beth. I'm happy to. Last week, we actually sent out 2 contracts to sponsors who we had been negotiating with. The people that we work with at brands want to move sponsorships forward, right? But they need help in doing that. And so they're doing their best to move forward. So we actually have had a couple of sponsors who have asked us to send contracts because they want to continue to go through that process. We have also heard from a couple of more national sponsors that they are just hitting the pause button for right now. They are reassessing internally. They are not saying they don't want to move forward with their sponsorship. but they are asking that we be patient, and that their intention is to continue to move forward, but they are reassessing and having that conversation internally. So I think that's a good time, by the way, to say, how can I be helpful? Can I arm you with information? Can I arm you with some ideas or some of our thoughts around why it's important you continue to partner with us? And I think many of them will be really grateful for that. So we have provided some of that information to people as well. We have, of all of the people that we have contacted in the last couple of weeks, we have only had one. Well, let me back up. We had an event that's canceled. I contacted all of the sponsors. I let them know that event was being canceled. That announcement would be made later that day.
What is the best thing that we can, best way that we can position our event to be ready when those sponsors come back again?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that we can do. One is take a look at the messaging and how you're telling the story of your event. Seafair is granted the good fortune of having a dynamic marketing director. And so I think looking at how you're telling the story, I think research is going to be more important than ever. I think having some specific data about your audience, I think reminding, having data about the impact of events in your community, right? So going back and being prepared to sell sponsorship and event marketing as a discipline is going to be important. Really focusing on what are you doing differently as an event? What are some of the steps that you're taking to improve the guest experience, to address the challenging time? I think it's really important to have a plan. This is a good time to work on a sales plan. Know what your revenue goal number is, have your prospect list ready, shore up your communications and your sales materials, think about doing things differently. Sponsors will want to hear when the recovery begins and when you start selling sponsorships to your events again, that you've used this time to do things differently and to improve your process and your system and the integration of sponsors into your event. And I think that's going to be a really powerful message, but this is the time to prepare. Definitely get the plan in place, be well prepared, and you will know when it's time to accelerate your effort.
That's great. Now, someone from Bellingham Sea Feast brought up a really good counterpoint to what I was just saying earlier. And the question is, how would you suggest responding to partners who say there might not be a desire from the public to return to large events in 2020?
Well, history has not shown that to be true. There isn't anything that shows that people have not wanted to come back together after a crisis. If someone can think of an example, I'd love to hear it. There certainly isn't any that are coming to me, but I think it's important that as an industry and for you as your event in Bellingham, be decisive about this, believe it, right? Be powerful and say, we are coming back. Our event is going to happen and the community is going to thank us for it. And they are going to come together because we are the event, the activity that brings our community back together. So I think it's important to be steadfast, be big and bold on this. You're coming back and you're going to come back bigger and better than you are today. And I think that's the message to communicate even to people who are doubtful of that.
I love that. I think we all want to feel that sense of confidence from the people around us. And it's our job to also demonstrate that same confidence. That's a great point. I have a question from Stacy, who asked if you could please speak more about the I know statements.
Right. Yeah. So we, before we do any outreach to potential sponsors, we do some research on them and we put together 5 key I know statements. These I know statements help to show that you've done your research, and it also just helps you to make connections to those companies before you make the call. So you can So you can anticipate what might be important to them, what some of their goals are, and what might be the right sponsorship opportunity. So for example, if we were going to create I know statements today for T-Mobile, I'm sure a few of you can immediately think of a few things, right? We know magenta is their color. We know that they're going through a partnership with Sprint. We know that they sponsor the New Year's Eve fireworks. We know that they recently launched a military initiative within their organization. So those are a few, and we know that they have mobile marketing units that they're sending out to events all over. So those are the kinds of I know statements that you want to have prepared. And then when you make that call, you can say, you know, here, I know that you've recently launched a military initiative within T-Mobile, and we have free admission for military personnel and their families at our event. I thought this could be a great sponsorship opportunity, you know, for you, right? So that's the I know statement and the purpose of having I know statements.
That's really great. I have another question that is saying, if my live event cancels this summer, I'm thinking to run a virtual home viewing version with music and feature content. Is there an approach to sponsors that I can use for this format?
Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of us are having this conversation right now, and it's happening all over the country. And we are exploring taking events online. Check out Reg Fox, by the way. They have just announced some software that they're making available to people who want to move their events online. I have not looked at it yet, but there's that could be an interesting resource of information for you. Here's what I would do. I would reach out to the sponsor, potential sponsors, and say, here's what we're thinking about. I'm curious about your thoughts. Do you think this is a good idea? Would this benefit you? Involve them in the process and ask them how they would want to be integrated. I mean, the one thing that we know about all sponsors is that digital and social platforms have become a very important way for them to activate their sponsorships. So I think it's good to involve them in that conversation, and I think people will be receptive to it. So, but involve them early on. I wouldn't try to figure out how to integrate them now. Ask them how they want to be involved.
That's great advice. Okay, Stacy has another question. Any suggestions for strategy in retaining sponsors for nonprofit and charitable events, so specifically in that category?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what's most important is to just go back and remind them that their audience, your audience, is important to them, and that you are going to do all you can to be their voice, to talk about their company to your audience. This is the time for all of us to make sure that we are recognizing our sponsors in big, bold ways. No more small logos at the bottom of the page, right? No 25 logos on a banner. This is the time for us to make sure that they're very well represented. Assure them that you're going to do that. Let them know that they're important to you, that you are going to recognize them and create opportunities for them to interact with your audience, and that they're making your event possible and you're not going to forget that. And so I would appeal to them in that way. Now, of course, you need to have the internal conversations with leadership and with, you know, the stakeholders to make sure everyone is well prepared to do that. But this is a time when we need to have that conversation about how are we going to increase the recognition of our sponsors, make sure that everybody agrees to that and is behind you, so you can go out there and confidently tell people, stick with me. We're going to be bigger and better. We're going to represent you in a big way. We're going to help you speak to our audience.
You know, what occurred to me when you were just answering that question is, especially I think nonprofits come into this with a sense that we need help. We need your money, as opposed to a position of power. And if nonprofits can position themselves as a place of leverage, an opportunity for your partners and sponsors to take advantage of, then you have flipped that position of power, and your value for your event has just exponentially increased. And I think that's a mind shift that nonprofits really need to make.
Hmm. Yeah, Beth, you're absolutely right, and that may be an important thing for us to talk about in the coming weeks.
Right.
Right, is making that shift, and our work together on USA Games, right, for Special Olympics.
Mhm.
We know that's true. We know that when you make that shift from a more philanthropic approach to fundraising, to a sponsorship approach, that you need to be involved and you need to support this. And here are all the reasons why we saw a really positive response to that. So yeah,
Yes.
that's great. Thank you.
So we have another a good question from Shanna, who is a photographer, and she's asking, how can vendors help their partners at this time? I understand reaching out to each individual, but she's wondering if you have any examples where vendors can be in that same position of offering help.
Mm. Wow, that's really a great question. Um, I think just asking that question, right, says something about you and how you think and how you work with people. I'm trying to think if there's a particular example that I have, and at the moment of a vendor kind of stepping into that role, and at the moment there isn't anything coming to me, but. Curious, Beth, or if there's anyone else who has a thought about that and can chime in.
Well, I do. To me, I think that we are entering into a time where going back to a little bit of the barter system could be a valuable action item. If a photographer can offer services in exchange for something that's of value to you. I think bartering goods and services at this point are value in kind opportunities, may be much easier for some partners to take advantage of or to offer than cash. And it may offset specific expenses for an event or a partner. So I think that's what I would look to is again, doing business a little differently. It doesn't have to just be an exchange of cash for services. So I'd approach it from that direction.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think, again, we all have a voice and a platform, right? Either through our events or through our own personal social media. And as a photographer, you have great images of events that you've captured. And I imagine that there are some things that you could also be doing on social media. Again, when when it works for you, right? When it feels like it's the right thing to do, post one of those great pictures and say, I can't wait for the 4th of July. I can't wait to see the Seafair fireworks, or whatever that event may be in your community. And I think, vendors can help just share that message that they're also looking forward to a better time.
I like that. It offers some hope.
Yeah.
Okay, one other question. Do we need to think differently about media sponsorship at this time in the crisis?
Um, okay, great question. Thanks for asking that. I think we need to probably think differently about all of our partnerships, right? But that is certainly true with media partners. Um, there are a couple of different media partners here in Seattle where their corporations are already anticipating tremendous losses from now until the end of the year, and they're preparing for that. Now, to be honest, was a little surprised about that because we're all at home and we're all watching TV. It seems to me that the viewing numbers are probably, increasing at this time, but the sales revenue is likely declining. So we'll see if they're able to rise to the challenge, and regain some of that advertiser revenue. But I think that media companies are going to see the value of events and bringing community together. And I think that they're going to be really supportive. And so, again, I would reach out to them in the same way you would a sponsor and say, I recognize this may be an untimely email. I hope it's a welcome distraction. And if you're interested in having a conversation about the future, we would love to talk with you. And I would reach out to them and let them know you're ready to meet when they're ready to have a conversation. But I think they're going to be looking for some creative ways to increase their projected decline in revenue. And one of them might be through sponsorship sales. And so, one of the things you can be thinking about is how can we put together very specific sponsorship packages that we can give to our media partners that they're able to sell to their advertisers, and it helps them to generate revenue. Know that they're going to be looking for, how do I generate revenue? And what opportunities can you offer them through your event?
Yeah, it's the bottom line. I think especially, with the delay, the rescheduling of the Olympics, and some of these other, of course, events will be delayed or rescheduled. So it's going to be a shift in the media world and how they approach sponsorships and partnerships.
Yeah, that's right.
A couple kind of more specifically for you, I've had some people interested in working with you for your consulting services. And the question is, if they have a question or if they want to retain your service, would you rather that they send you an email or reach you by phone?
Yeah, either is fine with me. Yep. Paula at caravelmarketing.com, or should I give out my phone number?
Sure.
Happy to do that. 206-351-2805. Feel free to give me a call. Please, also, if there's anyone who wants to get a group together to have a more in-depth conversation, I am absolutely happy to help facilitate the conversation. I have to say, it's a bit challenging for me to be sitting here talking. I really want to know what you guys are thinking. I want to know the challenges that you have. I want to be able to help you in any way that I can. So please let me know if anyone wants to have that conversation. I've already been home for 2 weeks, so I'm also anxious to connect with people. So let me know if you want to have a call.
That's great. I think even connecting virtually and having a brainstorm session through Zoom is a valuable exercise at this stage. So great. Well, I also have had several folks on Facebook just say how much they appreciate all of your feedback here today, Paula. So we appreciate your time, your guidance and counsel. And one last thing, I've had some folks ask, could you repeat your email and your phone number one more time? And for all the viewers, we'll also include this with the material so that you can access it there. But Paula, maybe share one more time.
Sure, absolutely. My email is paula at caravelmarketing.com, and that's CARAVEL marketing.com. And my cell phone number is 206-351-2805.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we just wish you the very best, Paula. Stay healthy to you and your team and your family, and look forward to innovating and reinventing what all of this looks like in the future.
Great. Terrific. Best of luck, everybody. Be well.